Welcome to Season 3, Episode 13 of the Gospelovergimmicks podcast. I got the big red Bible out, and you know what that means. Bible study time. Let's get after it. Hello and welcome to the Gospelovergimmicks podcast. I'm your host, Richard Storm Norman, here to tell you everything I know, some things I highly suspect. Today, like I just mentioned, it is Bible study time. That time where we study a chapter out of the Bible. We do it every other month. At least we have for at least the last year or so. So, 1 Samuel 17 was the chapter that won the contest because it was the only chapter that anybody submitted, so it won by default. So David and Goliath is what this chapter is about, and since this was a narrative passage, y'all know what a narrative passage is, right? It's just telling a story. So it's not exactly deep. Now I can't say this is going to be a deep study or anything, because it's just the story of David and Goliath. Now, I do got some cool things, some cool facts and figures to talk about that I think are pretty cool. And just some commentary I threw in there because, hey, that's what I do. Okay? So, we'll get to that in a minute. Before we get there, how you doing? How are y'all doing? So, this week at work, I started the week Monday, and I ended the week today. Today's Friday when I'm recording this, on funeral detail. And you might be thinking, what is that? Well, the whole reason is because I work at a retirement community, so people die there. It happens, this is to be expected. So we had some people die who got cremated. They wanted their ashes spread in the river, which is behind the property. Only problem is the road that goes behind the property is currently under construction. The city is redoing the road, so it's kind of not easy for elderly folk to get across it at the moment because they haven't paved it yet. So Monday there was it was like an 8-inch drop from the road because they just put dirt on it. They hadn't put nothing on it, so we had to build ramps and stuff so the people could get up. But luckily today they put lime rock down and it was a lot higher, so I didn't have to help nobody across the road. But Monday I had to help a bunch of little old ladies get up over that big old curve so they could get out on the dock and watch somebody's ashes get put in the water. So that's what I did Monday. That's what I did today. No big deal there. Can't complain. Getting paid to stand there really is what I did. But we had another nor'easter this week, but it's slowly fading away. It was pretty nice today. I kept my long sleeves on all day, and but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible. We went out on the river yesterday though because we thought that service was going to be yesterday, and goodness gracious, that wind. But anyway, my co-worker at work assures me that is the end of the cold weather. There's no more cold weather. That's it. We're done. So I just have to take him at his word because I guess he's like an expert or something. I don't know. But before we get into the main topic, like I said we was going to do, is Bible giveaway time. The Bible study is for March. Technically, it still is March. And even though when this podcast comes out, it's going to be April. Technically, it's still March when I'm recording it, so we're going to get off on a technicality on that one. But since it's going to be April 1st, when it comes out, it's going to be Bible giveaway time, because April's Bible giveaway month. Now, if you're new to the podcast, that's how we rotate. 1 month we do a Bible study, and then we do a Bible giveaway, and then we do a Bible study, and vice versa, so on, so forth. That's how we do it. So we're going to be doing a Bible giveaway, and we're going to be doing it right now. Well, we're not giving it away right now, but I'm going to tell you about it right now. Bible I got today is this Holman. What is this called? Let me see if I can. I'm sure it has a name, like a proper name. KJV large print ultra thin Bible, and this one is in genuine leather. I don't know what kind of leather. It just says black genuine. So that's what it is. It's thumb index, y'all. Y'all know how much I love thumb index Bibles, and this one is thumb indexed. So that just makes me excited just to give y'all a Bible I like already. But it's brown, which is nothing wrong with that. It's a good color brown, like a chocolate brown. That's the only color I could find it in when I bought it. I did change the ribbons out, so you might be looking at the ribbons like. I changed the ribbons out. It's a brown Bible with 2 yellow ribbons that I put in there. And it's got that Denmark font in it. I know if you're listening to the audio, that ain't going to help you. Hopefully the camera is focusing on that. But it's got that Denmark text. If you know, what is it called? Holman. If you know Holman's Bibles, you know what the Denmark text is. It's not bad. It's not my favorite font. It's kind of a modern type thing, but it is what it is. But of course, King James Version, because, you know, like it says on the thing behind me, King James Bible believer. But I used it a little bit. Like I took it to church a few times. It's broken in pretty good, actually. You notice that? The leather feels good. Even though this is not, you know, high dollar, this is not comparable to like church Bible posters or anything like that. It's still pretty decent. Got a paste down liner. It's still pretty decent Bible for what it is. And man, it's softer than I thought it was. It's been sitting on the shelf for a little while, but it's softer than I thought it was and more flexible than I thought it was. But it's got some raised hubs on it. If you see there, raised hubs. And like I said, thumb indexed. I'm a sucker for thumb indexed. Gold gilt. It's Holman, and I like Holman. If I was going to buy a Bible that was not a church, you know, something cheap, like if someone asked me, hey, I need a good Bible, I'm going to tell them church, first of all. Church Bible publishers. But if they're like, oh, that's a little bit, you know, $50 to $70 is too expensive for me, I'll be able to then find you a good Holman, because even Holman's, you know, leather touch and whatnot Bibles, they just seem like they're built sturdy to me. I like Holman Bibles. So that's what we're giving away, and I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you there's not verses underlined in here. There's one right there. Matthew 11:6, and blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. So there's some underlined verses in here, not a whole lot, because I haven't used this a whole lot. But I'll go ahead and tell you for the next Bible giveaway we're going to do in June, there's underlined verses in there too. That's just how I am. I can't help it. I like marking in Bibles. So that's just the way it's going to be. Sorry. But it's not too many. The other Bible that I'm giving away in June, there's only one verse underlined in it. This one probably has like 4 or 5 maybe, if that. Like I said, I didn't use it too much. But this is the Bible we're giving away for the month of April. I will pick a winner on April. There we go with my calendar. Yeah, April 15th is a Monday. And since episodes come out on Monday, we will pick a winner. I forgot to put my headphones on. Alright, now we're in there. So, this is the Bible we're giving away for April. If you want to win, now like I said, we're going to open this up to the YouTube people. The people on YouTube can participate. All you got to do, if you're on YouTube, is number one, you got to be subscribed to the channel, obviously. So that's number one. If you ain't done that, go ahead and get it out of the way right now. Just click on the little red subscribe thing at the bottom here, and you'll have that taken care of. And number two, I'm going to ask you a question, and you put the answer in the comment section. That way, I can try as much as possible to weed out the people who just want to win this so they can sell it on their eBay site, because that ain't what we're here for. I'm here to give this Bible away to people that subscribe to the channel, who are going to use it, or going to give it to somebody who's going to use it, and whatnot, so on and so forth. So my question is, what is your favorite book in the Bible? Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, the whole Bible is my favorite. I understand that. That is the most right answer to the question. But if you had to pick one book out of here that you enjoy reading out of the most, what book would that be? Would it be Psalms? Would it be 1 Corinthians? Would it be Romans? If you could pick one chapter out of here that you would call your favorite, one book. If you could pick one book out of here you would call your favorite, put it in the comments. And I will pick a winner, like I said, on the 15th, which actually will be before that, but you'll find out that on the 15th. But we'll pick a winner in 2 weeks, and you shall win the Bible. And I will post this on Facebook too, and you can win the Bible. But I'm telling you right now, I'm putting it on you, the honor system. Don't enter the contest, because people can have different names on Facebook and YouTube. And don't be, a jerk and enter the contest on YouTube and enter it on Facebook too. That'd be messed up. But I'm just putting it on the honor system. So if you want to deceive me, then that's between you and God. Maybe you'll repent of it. But that's the Bible we're giving away. Let's get into the Bible study. 1 Samuel, chapter number 17. This might be the longest Bible study we've ever done. Let's count these again. 58 verses. Probably the longest Bible study we've done ever. I'm not even going to say I think so. I'm positive this is the longest Bible study we've done. So what we're going to do, because it is 58 verses, I'm not going to read the whole chapter like I always do. That's how we usually do Bible studies. I read the whole chapter and then we go back to the beginning and start verse by verse. What I'm going to do is read chunks of it. I'm going to divide it up, and we'll read it. We'll read some and then we'll go verse by verse. Hopefully I remember what my sections are here. But first, we're going to read verses 1 through 11. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochoh and Azekah, in Ephes-Dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had an helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of his coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one, bearing a shield, went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me, and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him, and kill him, then shall ye be our servants, and serve us. And the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. So what I did with this Bible study was I underlined in red the parts that I wanted to touch on. So now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shochoh, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. So I wanted to know, where is Shochoh and Azekah? So they're about 15 to 20 miles west of Bethlehem. So Shochoh or Shocho, whatever it's called, is about 15 miles from Bethlehem on the west. And then if you go another 5 miles, you'll be at Azekah. And in between, is the valley of Elah. The Philistines had been encroaching on Judah since the days of Samson, and now they were, not far from Bethlehem, obviously, and that wouldn't have been a good thing if they'd have pushed on through. If you look at it in terms of battle tactics and whatnot, it wouldn't be good if they captured Bethlehem. That'd be terrible. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. So now I'm wondering to myself, what does array mean? What does that mean? Battle in array. An array means to position troops in a state of readiness. So think of a battle where you got all your troops and you send them over to where they're going to do battle, but they're just kind of hanging out in the camp. They're getting ready, they're loading their weapons or whatnot. So that's not set in array when they're getting ready to battle. When they're set in array means they're in position, like say you got your armored corps, your tanks, your armored personnel carriers, they're all set up ready to go. You got your infantrymen, they're all set up ready to go. Your air wing, everything is in their place and ready to go. And that's what setting the battle in array means. Like the only thing they're waiting on is the command to attack. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. So how tall is that? So we've always been told that 6 cubits and a span is 9 feet, which is about right. A cubit varies because the measurement of a cubit has always been described as from the tip of your fingers to your elbow here, where your arm crooks, where your elbow is. So obviously that's not the same for everybody, but it's generally 18 inches is a cubit, give or take, depending on how big you are. So 6 cubits and a span would make Goliath 9 foot 6 inches tall. So that's pretty tall boy, right there. And he had an helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of his coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. How heavy is that? Well, it's 125 pounds. He wore a coat that weighed 125 pounds. Now you'd have to be 9'6" to be able to carry that. Verse 6. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. So what is a weaver's beam? I don't have a clue, but I'll tell you how big it is. About 2 to 2.5 inches in diameter. So, I don't know, what do I have? This can's probably about 2.5 inches, give or take. That's a big old spear. And then the head of his spear, 600 shekels of iron, That's 15 pounds. I can't even picture anything in here that's 15 pounds. Anything in here. But 15 pounds, I mean, it ain't super heavy, but it ain't light either. I mean, you wouldn't be able to I wouldn't be able to throw a spear too far if it had a 15-pound head on it. Verse 8, and he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. The Philistines had so much confidence in Goliath, and they wished to avoid the bloodshed of war as anyone would, so they attempted an offer of one-on-one battle. They didn't want to fight either. You know, nobody would. Nobody even wants to fight today. Sometimes you fight because you got to, but you don't want to. If you could end the whole thing with a one-on-one situation, I'm sure you take it. Verse 9, if he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. Goliath in his arrogance sets forth the conditions of the battle that they will come to regret later. He was so confident that he can whoop anybody who came out against him that, he started making all these claims. Oh, well, if you come out, we'll be your servants and whatnot. That's why that saying goes, never let your mouth write checks that your butt can't cash. You ever heard that one? Verse 10, and the Philistines said, I defy the armies of Israel this day, give me a man, that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. This highlights one of the main problems already. But we're going to cover this later in the study, but this highlights when a leader shows cowardice, it spreads to the people like virus. If you're in command of troops in the military or whatnot, you cannot show weakness. You can't have doubt. You have to be confident all the time. And when Saul shows that he's afraid, Goliath, and people are like, well, if Saul, the king, is afraid, then I'm afraid too. They're going to be afraid too. That's why a leader can't show that kind of, weakness. I'm not saying you can't be scared. I'm just saying don't show it to the people that are underneath you. Okay, now we're going to read verses 12 through 19. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Aminadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest. And the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So verse 12, now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. But the man went among men for an old man that day. It says he has 8 sons, yet in 1 Chronicles 2:13 through 15 it says 7. So what happened? Is that a contradiction in your Bible? So is that a contradiction? Consider the fact that Chronicles is recorded later than 1 Samuel. A possible explanation is that one of Jesse's sons died. In the time between this was recorded and Chronicles was recorded, perhaps one of Jesse's sons died, and that's why in Chronicles it says he had 7 sons. And another reason is the custom was that when a prophet wrote something, you did not change it. So if he perhaps got the count wrong, Samuel perhaps got the count wrong, and then it was adjusted in another book. Somebody else said 7, and he said 8. You didn't change what Samuel said, even if it was wrong. Now, I'm just offering that up as a possibility. I don't believe that. I think the most likely thing is that one of Jesse's sons died in between the time. So, and in verse 13, and the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and next unto him Aminadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep. So I'm guessing that David must have followed his brothers to the battle when they first went, but then he had to come home to take care of the sheep. 16, and the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. 40 days is a long time when you consider that some of these soldiers were kind of like volunteers. They weren't full-time soldiers. They had farms and sheep and livestock to tend to. So I think this 40-day thing of this drawn out thing was part of the Philistines' plan, because he can, if the guy that's across from you that you're supposed to be fighting is starting to get worried about his farm back home, that can really hurt his morale. 17, and Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren an ephah of this parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. So I was like, what's a pledge? What does that mean? Well, pledge is basically to give your word, correct? So Jesse wanted David to go get the word of his brothers. Like, he wants to know, are they okay? And he wants to hear it from them. So get their pledge. Yes, tell Dad that we're okay. So they're giving David their word that they're okay, and he can go back and tell Dad that they're okay. Verse 20 through 27. And David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistine have put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth the Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. So verse 20, and David rose up early in the morning, and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench, as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. David's obedience is a large part of why he was so successful, why God called him a man after my own heart, because David was obedient to God. That's how he got to where he was. That's how he became king. 21, for Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And what I thought when I read that was, you done messed up now, Goliath. You were doing pretty good up until this point, but now you got David's attention. 24, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have you seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up. And it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. Apparently Saul had offered up a reward for anyone who was willing to kill the giant. Now I don't know at what point he did this, but consider the fact that 40 days went by and no one took him up on his offer. 26, and David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? David wasn't concerned with the reward that the king had offered. He wasn't, concerned with that kind of thing. He was like, this dude is talking trash about the army of the living God. Why is nobody doing anything about it? He can't fathom that he can't understand why no one is taking care of this. But we'll get to David's confidence part later. 27, and the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth them. Oh, that was all we had for that section. Let's see what we're going to do next. We'll go to verse 31. 28:31. And Eliab his eldest brother, when he spake unto the and Eliab his eldest brother heard when he spake unto the man, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner, and the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. So verse 28, and Eliab his eldest brother heard when he spake unto the man, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. So since David was the anointed king in waiting, as we read in the previous chapter, obviously his brother was probably pretty jealous, He's the youngest brother, and he was picked to be the next king. Not them. So that might be part of the reason they went to the battle to begin with. To prove their worth. To be like, hey, look, we're special too. And they went to the battle. 29, and David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? David doesn't understand why his brothers don't see Goliath as an enemy of God, and that they cannot be defeated with God on their side. Like, the whole point of the whole theme throughout this chapter is David just cannot understand any other way of thinking than, hey, God is on our side, we can't lose. Like, why are you scared of him? He can't fathom it. 31, and when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. Rehearsed. They basically went and repeated hey, David said this, and then told him what David said, and he sent for David. We'll read 32 and 37. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. People are always underestimating David because he's young, He's young. What does 1 Timothy 4:12 say? Let no man despise your youth. As a shepherd over his father's flock, he protected the sheep from predators like the lion and the bear that he mentions, with God's help, of course. As the future king, he now wanted to protect the flock of his people from the predator that was Goliath, with the help of God. So he doesn't look at Goliath, this situation with Goliath, as being any different as when he killed the lion and the bear. To him, Goliath is just another pest that needs to be dealt with, and he'll deal with them the same way he did before. That's why he can't fathom why everybody's afraid of Goliath. 37, David said, Moreover, the Lord hath delivered me out of the paw of the lion, and out of the paw of the bear, and he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. The thought that he could not defeat Goliath never entered his mind. Like I've been saying. How can we say that? Can we say that we trust in God so much that the thought of failure does never enter our mind? I don't think we can say that. Not all of us. Maybe some of us. As far as David was concerned, this was a win-win situation. He couldn't lose. He's got God. Should we not be thinking that same way? How much better off would we be if we thought in these same terms, like, oh, this trouble, this trial has come up against us. What are we going to do? What if we come up to it and be like, that's okay, I got God and he's going to get me through it. And what if it just got to the point where when we're facing trouble, we can't even fathom that something bad is going to happen from it, because we got so much trust in God. So we'll read 38-47. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put on a helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy and of a fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So verse 39, David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said to Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. David was a shepherd. He wasn't a soldier. Armor was not something he was accustomed to wearing. So let this be a lesson. When God calls you to do something, do it in the way that he has made you. I was just listening to a preacher talk about this the other day, and mentioned something similar to this in Sunday school before. If God calls you to be a preacher, then go preach. Don't go try and preach like this guy over here, or this guy over here, or this guy over here. Preach in the way God has made you. If he's made you a certain way, if he's made you one of them jump up on the pulpit, scream till your blood red in the face, then go preach that way. But if he's made you like me, you're kind of quiet, you're not very loud, then go and preach that way. Work in the way work with the talents God has given you. You know? Don't try to be like somebody else. If God's called you to sing, sing with your voice in the way you sing usually. Don't go and try to sound like somebody else. I want to sing like them. Sing it like you sing. You know, do things in the way God's made you. Verse 40, and he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Now everyone likes to claim that David took 5 stones because Goliath had 4 brothers. And I like that when people say that. But however, we really don't know why he took 5 stones. The point is, he used not the king's weapons that he was unfamiliar with, but rather what he knew. Same things he used to slay the bear and the lion is what he was going to use to slay Goliath, because it worked last time. It might as well work again. So he used what he was familiar with, just like we were just talking about. If God calls you to do something, whatever that is, use what he has equipped you with. Like that saying goes, God equips who he calls. If he's called you to something, that means he's equipped you for it. So use what he's got, what he's given you. Don't try to do it like somebody else does it. Verse 42, and when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth and ruddy, and of a fair countenance. So ruddy means that David's skin was like reddish. Like, kind of like a bad sunburn, I guess. I don't know, because I didn't look up no pictures of what ruddy looks like, but he has a reddish skin to him. And fair countenance. Countenance has to do with your facial expression, as far as I could tell from what I was looking up definitions for countenance, but there really weren't no good ones. But basically it means your facial expression. So what I understood this to be was David had a fair countenance. So he didn't come to Goliath with his war face on. You ever heard that term? War face? Let me see your war face. That face you make when you're running into battle. David was of the idea that he was about to go out there and kill Goliath. He didn't need to have any type of, warlike or any facial expression. To him, it was just something that needed to be done. He was going to go do it, So he had a fair countenance. That's how I'm taking it. Like he just walked out there like, yep, I'm about to kill him. He didn't look mean. He didn't look scared. He just looked fair. Verse 43, the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Goliath was more right than he realized. He states that a staff was fit only to chase dogs away, which is exactly what David believed he was doing. In David's opinion, Goliath wasn't nothing but a dog. Like the bear and the lion, just a pest that needed to be done away with. Chasing a dog away from the flock. Oh yeah. That's exactly what David believed he was doing, chasing a dog away from the flock. My handwriting's terrible, y'all. Bear with me. Verse 45, Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. See, here's the problem. Goliath's faith was in his size and his weapons. David doesn't boast in his size. Obviously, he doesn't have much size. He doesn't boast in his weapons because all he's got is a sling and a staff. What David boasts in is his most powerful weapon that Goliath didn't know nothing about, and that's God. He had God on his side. Both David and Goliath were confident. The difference is David was confident in God, while Goliath was confident in himself. David plans to show that the God of Israel is the one true God. Oh, that was for 47, right? I'm getting a little. I should have labeled these better. That was for verse 46, where he said, "All the earth may know there is a God in Israel." In verse 47 it says, "And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you in our hands." I think what he means there about all this assembly is probably both the Philistine army and the Jewish army. Because the Philistine army, they don't know. It says, "Shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword, for the battle was the Lord's." Well, the Philistines obviously don't know that because they're a bunch of heathens. But another part of the problem is apparently Israel's army don't know it either, because they've been scared of Goliath for 40 days. So I think what he's saying when he says all this assembly is he's talking about the whole assembly of armies that are gathered here are going to get a lesson in who God is. So now we'll read 48 through 54. "And it came to pass when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine." Now, does that sound like somebody that's scared to you? "And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him, and there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran, and stood upon the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sharon, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent." Verse 50, "So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him, and there was no sword in the hand of David." A battle between Israel and the Philistines which had lasted 40 days, David ended in less than a minute. Why? Because he trusted in God, unlike Saul and his army did. I posted on my personal Facebook page what I got out of this chapter is that the army, Saul and his army, they looked at Goliath and they compared Goliath to themselves. And they said, "Wow, he's a lot bigger than us. I don't know if we can do this." David looked at Goliath and compared him to God and said, "Man, Goliath's actually pretty small. Compared to God, Goliath ain't big at all." Because his trust was in God, not himself. So that's why he didn't understand what the problem was. Because compared to God, Goliath ain't nothing. And he had God on his side, so. 51, "Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled." Consider how big and heavy Goliath's sword must have been. David cut off his head just like he said he would do back in verse 46. So I'm thinking David's adrenaline must have been running pretty good for him to be able to pick up that sword. It doesn't say how much his sword weighed, but consider that his coat weighed 125 pounds. I imagine his sword wasn't too light either. Even, swords for regular people, like a real one, swords for like regular people like us, they're pretty heavy. So I know you see them on TV and you see people around and about with them, but those aren't real swords. In real life, real swords are actually pretty heavy. 52, and the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley, to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Shaaraim, even unto Gath and unto Ekron. So all of a sudden, Saul's army got some motivation. They're sitting there for 40 days, woe is me. And then as soon as David does the dirty work and kills Goliath, now all of a sudden they want to get up and fight. They got all kinds of motivated when a small shepherd boy did what they couldn't. Verse 53, and the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. Basically, they raided the abandoned tents and took whatever was valuable. Verse 54, and David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put his armor in his tent. Jerusalem at the time where this battle takes place. Jerusalem was under control of the Jebusites. So it's likely that David took the head of Goliath there kind of to send a message. Because I think, they all knew the Jebusites weren't supposed to be there, and they were going to have to get rid of them at some point. Because like God told them to get rid of all these people when they came into the land. So I think, now there's other explanations that I saw for why David took the head to Jerusalem, but I like that one the best, so I'm going to go with that one. He took it there to send the Jebusites a message. Verse 55. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. David was Saul's personal musician. Like he played, if you read some chapters before, he played music for Saul. So Saul knew who he was, or he forgot who he was, whichever is the case. But I think what Saul wanted to know was who was David's family. Like he didn't care who you were if you were just going to play music for him. That ain't whoever, whatever. But if you're going to be marrying his daughter, he needs to know what kind of family you come with. Like any good father who's about to give away their daughter, I want to know about the boy my daughter's about to be marrying. What kind of family does he come from? 56, and the king said, inquire thou whose son this stripling is. Stripling basically means teenager. And then finally, verse 57, last note I have. And David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine. Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. So this was probably before, after David got done cutting his head off, but before he took it to Jerusalem is when he went and saw Saul. And Saul said to him, whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. And that is the end of chapter 17, all 58 verses. Like I said, not the deepest study, but it's a narrative. It's a story. It kind of tells itself. So I tried to get as much detail out of it as I could, but it is what it is. So I hope I helped you. At least now you know how much Goliath's coat weighed. So you got that going for you. So that's going to be it for the show today. I appreciate y'all joining me for a very long Bible study, but I had a feeling it was going to be long. Probably shouldn't have done the Bible giveaway at the same time, because that added quite a bit of time. But anyway, Facebook. Facebook.com/gospelovergimmicks, where you can find us on Facebook. The Bible giveaway will be posted there if you want to enter it there. But I ask you only enter it either on Facebook or on YouTube. Only one. I'm putting you on the honor system. Twitter at GXG_ministries on Twitter. Not a whole lot goes on there, but if you want to follow me there, you can do that. Instagram at gospelovergimmicks on Instagram. And there I post what's going to be on next Monday's episode. Now, not always on early in the week, like I posted yesterday, even though I already knew what it was going to be. But sometimes it might be later in the week before I tell you what's going to be on Monday's episode. Because sometimes I got to think about it a while, That's Instagram. Email. You need to email me a question, an idea for a show you'd like to see me do. You'd like to know more about how to get saved. gospelovergimmicks@gmail.com is where you can do that. And you're going to need that if you on YouTube and you win. We're going to need to get in touch, and we're going to have to do that by email. So remember that email. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there in 2 weeks. If you want to help with the expenses of the ministry. Oh, by the way, I totally forgot to mention this. If you win the Bible, you get a sticker. The sticker will be inside the Bible if you win the Bible. So you'll get a free sticker. So you got that going for you. Patreon. If you want to support the ministry by donating a little bit of cash to help me pay for all the expenses like the hosting of the podcast, the video editing software, the cost of buying the Bibles for the giveaways and shipping the Bibles to people when someone of a distance wins them, and the cost of making these stickers, and whenever we finally get the website finished, I'm going to have to pay for that. So if you want to help, we got 2 patrons, Joanna and Roger, and it's awesome. But if you want to help, $1 a month or more, whatever you want to do, patreon.com/gospelovergimmicks. I'm going to quit jacking my jaw now because I've been talking for an hour and my throat is a little bit scratchy. So, until next time, take up your cross, carry on. Thank you for watching Gospel Over Gimmicks. Please come again.